Welcome. I am Stephen Fox, and I am making comics.
Hi, I'm Steve Fox. Welcome back to Making Comics. XL. XL is the comic that I'm working through. My goal is, as I walk through my creative process, everything from writing, drawing, and self-publishing, that I can bring you alongside and we can do this thing together. In last episode, we talked about fleshing out the concept, making some key decisions about the theme of your story, and the tone, and also the genre. The tone really being how am I going to approach this genre. I've put together a outlining template that I think could be really useful. Over here on the left-hand side, I restate my theme. For me, it's accepting mortality and finality. And then I restate my tone. Okay, so the tone and the genre are somewhat intermingled. But to me, when I say tone, that's more how am I going to go about executing this genre. From the genres that I want to deal with are horror and comedy or dark comedy. So it's important for me to set some parameters on that. What I did is I wrote some notes. How am I going to approach my tone? Okay, the approach to humor, supernatural circumstances in a real world will frequently result in ridiculous situations. Ridiculous meaning they can be funny. In intense difficulty, humor is often the only defense. And that's true for most of us, Arthur and Chris are funny individuals, meaning that a lot of the comedy will come from dialogue. Okay, so then I start talking about how to approach the horror. Living is a brutal process. We live in denial. Dreaming our old age will maintain dignity. Age comes for us all, and then that process robs us of one luxury after another until it finally kills us. That is pretty dark. So what I've done next to restating my theme and tone is this timeline. So here, I've already made the two key decisions. You don't have to start this way, but I knew I wanted to frame my story with two birthdays, the 44th and the 45th birthday. And that decision came from an idea, but it was supported by the theme, accepting mortality and finality. What better way to reflect mortality than to tell a story between a birthday? So from there, I'm going to go off to the right side of this timeline, all containing the scenes that I already have in my head. Key is to start with the ones that are most important to you and that carry the theme and the tone forward. So, okay, I typed out here everything that came into my head, and really it's just a matter of taking these blocks and moving them onto the timeline. The format, you can work with the format however you want. Ultimately, I added a template that's similar to this one, but is more universally useful. In the description below, it's a link to a Dropbox file that any of you guys are welcome to download and give a whirl. But what you're trying to do here is take all of these scenes and lay them out chronologically. What that does, it helps you think through several different things. One, okay, what are the gaps? So what I do is I put together these settings, and in the settings, the things that will happen. So I know I want to start with a counseling session. What these two scenes take place, Arthur is telling the counselor about these things. They're a flashback. But the setting, the overall framing device, is the counseling session. Next, we go from there to a support group that the counselor suggested Arthur go to. Several key scenes happen there. That flow makes sense. That's cool. I think I'm good to keep moving forward. Okay, several things happen at the support group. The inciting incident and a couple of other key moments in the story that lead to the question, should they go to the hospital? And even though this is not a setting, I used that question to define the next several clicks, the next several things that need to happen. These blocks don't have to be full scenes. They're just the next thing that happens. You will discover that there are holes. So as you fill out your timeline, you are outlining all of the events in your story. Now, that does not mean that the final product of your story has to take place chronologically, but it's impossible to chop up your story and tell it out of order unless you have that full beginning to end chronology laid out. So a movie like Memento, it's critical that they laid out that real-time series of events, and that's what this timeline is for. So once you have your chronological beginning and end of the story, I use this draft as a starting point, and I only update it when I feel like I've backed myself into a corner and I'm like, oh crap, what comes next? And then I make a decision. Do I want to continue with the outline that I've created? Is it better than where my story is going organically? Or do I need to revise my outline to reflect this new organic decision that I've made as I'm writing? Because you don't want the outline to be so rigid that it prevents you from those spontaneous moments of superior creativity. Because there are going to be times when you are in the middle of writing and you understand these characters in a different way, or you understand your theme, what you have to say. There's a much more significant way to do it. Don't be a slave to the outline. The key is that first thinking through, beginning to end. The other thing I'm going to tell you, and it will not be in these videos, because if I'm being totally transparent, I think it is pretentious hogwash to a degree. And that is the 3-act, 4-act, 9-act, whatever number of acts story structure. If you're a writer who shares your work with other professionals and non-professionals, you are going to get the criticism about structure. Structure is nothing more than adhering to the parameters of whatever chosen medium you have. So if you write for television, you don't have a choice, man. You got to write for commercial breaks. If you want to write for, my outline is built for a graphic novel, but I'm doing this for me. I get to make that decision. If you are going to write for issue comics, you have got to find those breakpoints for 22 pages. That's your critical next decision. But you have got to keep 22 pages, or whatever the page count is for your medium, in mind. That is your structure. The 3-act structure is, it's impossible to tell a story without it being in 3 acts. It's just impossible. I was walking through the kitchen, stepped into water, stubbed my toe. That's a 3-act structure. I was walking through the kitchen, Act 1. Slipped into water, that's the inciting incident. The Act 2, that's the process, that's what changed things. And then I was in a precarious situation, and then stubbed my toe. That's the end. You cannot tell a story that's not in 3 acts. And 4 acts is just a pretentious way of saying 3 acts. I would encourage you to tell the story the way you love telling the story. One of the criticisms I got at the last video was they wanted to see more artwork. So in this video, what I'm going to do, a big part of my process is taking artwork and developing it while I'm developing the story. I don't stop doing some of the world building and the character design until I am drawing that first page. So that's one of the things I'm doing right now. In the story, there are several characters that I felt like needed to be designed. First one is a character called the Machinist. He's going to be the primary antagonist of the first several story arc. He is an ancient kind of creature who has modified his body just simply so he won't die, because he is horrified of dying. And the antenna on the top of his head, he uses those to control some of the other robotic monstrosities that he creates from the cadavers of humans and animals. I haven't designed all of the creatures that he's going to be using and creating, but I did come up with this guy, this is the miner. And if you look at him closely, one of his arms it collapses into a pickaxe, but it also has kind of a, I can't remember what that's freaking called, jackhammer, basically to break down rocks. Anyway, I wanted him to have a very kind of cast iron, old-fashioned machine look to him, and I wanted him to be the scariest of his machines. Another note about the miner, if you look at it, you'll notice, aside from these other character designs, he is in just a monochrome. I used to love black and white horror comics, or independent comics in general. So I think what I'm going to do is do some interior all of the interior pages will be that monochrome style, with maybe 3 or 4 key pages in full color. I think that would be a nice kind of cool approach to the story. But I also created, so the machinist lives underground. He works in an underground cavern beneath the main city that Arthur and Chris live in. And it's a long abandoned cave, but at the entrance of it, we have a guard that he has created from a reanimated corpse, and his head is floating in a globe of blood. Blood is one of the kind of visual cues to the mortality theme that I'm working with. The blood and fire are going to have a lot to do in the story. That's some of the development work I've been going through. Next week, we're going to get into my favorite part of the process on this end of things, writing the first story arc. So thanks very much. Subscribe, like it. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Bye. Hey, so since this channel is all about talking about making comics and loving comics and comics and comics and comics, I thought it'd be kind of cool to share at the end of each episode 2 new sections. One would be what I'm reading. And this week, during the quarantine, I ordered from a publisher I'd never heard of before. It's called TKO Studios. I believe it's tkostudios.com. But Garth Ennis, I have run across a few of his projects that I found interesting, even if I didn't love them always, or if they were a little too poignant, or sometimes I love harsh storytelling, as you can tell from the morbid character creations I've done, but other times I just have to be in the right mood. Anyway, I was drawn to Garth Ennis because he is known for not really loving superhero stories, and this book, Sarah, is incredible. I read it very quickly. It's really just 6 issues, but it's a lot more dense, story-wise, character-wise. A traditional superhero comic, I can read an issue in about 5 or 10 minutes these days. This was a much thicker read, much more, it's just dense. It has a lot. The art is amazing by Steve Epting. He's kind of known for bringing some realism to the illustration side of whatever he works on. He adds a whole different level of storytelling. This is a brutal kind of war story about some female Russian snipers that were recruited during the Battle of Leningrad, I think, the siege or the battle, whatever. 7 female snipers find themselves caught in the struggle against a German invader. Their deadliest shot is Sarah, whose inner demons may yet prove to be her undoing. But with the enemy to their front and the agents of the Soviet state lurking in the shadows, how long can any of the squad survive the terrifying maelstrom of war? It is awesome. My favorite thing about it is it is a very vicious portrayal of war. The story is not clear cut. It's not about good and evil. It's about war and how vicious it is, and I loved it. So anyway, check it out from TKO Studios, called Sarah by Garth Ennis. I've also called it Garth Ennis. If you know which one's actually proper, if you could comment below, that would be awesome, so I don't keep saying it incorrectly. But one of the other amazing contributions is Elizabeth Breitweiser. She's the colorist on this. The color is a tremendous aspect of the art. It's not distracting. It's not overly rendered. It is just beautiful. The focal points are very clear. It's not over texturized, overly rendered. Like this. Golly. Each chapter starts with essentially a title screen that's a full page. And they're just beautiful. So understated when necessary, and vibrant when that also serves the story. So anyway, that's what I'm reading. I just finished it yesterday. My next one is going to be Savage Dragon Archives, the first 25 issues. I've been kind of on a kick exploring the Image boys from the 90s, so I'll post that in the next video. Thanks. So second feature that I'm adding to these episodes is what am I watching? Because YouTube is a very rich place to just discover amazing talent. So I decided to turn this project into I really want to elevate my artistic ability. One artist that I follow on YouTube, his name is Ethan, Becker, I think. Crap, it's on my phone. If that's incorrect, I'll fix it somehow. Anyway,